Hello guys, welcome to Blue Tech Empire Python tutorials. In this tutorial, this video, we are going to be looking at the print function. The print function is a very common function. We use it all the time. It's to print a string of text on the key or on the console or on the output, or you can use it to print into an input stream, a stream of file. But most of the time, we use the print function to output some text or some number, or in fact, just some text. So the print function is very important with Python. That's one of the only way to print out text. Usually by default, the printf will print out text to the standard output, that's on the console, while you can also modify the standard output, like you can place a different output stream as the standard output, but by default, the printf will print out on the standard output, that's the stream of text we provide. Now, this printf function can be used to print any kind of object. You can use it to print an integer, a string, and so on. But there are two parameters of the printf function which are not very common. We call that this, which are named parameters. We are going to look at named parameters when we learn functions later on. But named parameters are parameters in which you pass to a function using the name. It's like a name value pair kind of parameter. So we are going to be looking at two name parameters which are paramount to the print function, especially if you want to use the print function within a while loop or a for loop. You need to modify these parameters in order to print out what you want to print out quite neatly. So we are going to be looking at the set parameters, SEP, and the end parameters. But first, I'm going to show you the general syntax of the print function. So let's look at the general syntax of the print function. Alright, so here we see the general syntax of the print function. A print function can take up to 5 parameters. We see the first one is an object or objects, which means you can pass multiple objects using a comma. Now, the Python will recognize these different objects, but you can use multiple objects. So I'm going to be showing you examples of how you can use multiple objects with the print function. But first, let's look at the main functions. Let's look at the main parameters of the print function. So we have objects, any objects. You can pass any object like an integer, a float, a string, or whatever. Then we have the SEP, SEP. That's the second parameter here. We have the SEP, or also known as the separator, like the separator. That's what we want to use to separate subsequent print functions. We are going to show you that. I'm going to show you that, like not actually subsequent string print functions, but if you pass multiple objects to the print functions, you have to tell the print function how to separate them. By default, the print function will use space, a single space character to separate them. That's why we usually just say pass multiple objects with a comma, and we see them printed out using a space. Now the end parameter, that's the last character that should be printed out with the print function. Now, by default, this parameter is the new line character. That's if you use the print function multiple times, you discover every print function print out a stream of text on a new line. That's because the ending character of the print function is the new line. But we can change that. If you want to print, for example, if you're printing a line of numbers using a while loop, you won't want them to print on different lines. You want them to print horizontally rather than vertically. So you can use the end name parameter to so you can specify space for the end name parameter. So the end name parameter is very important. Next, we have a file. You can print to a file. I'm going to show you that. And you see the default is system.stdout. That's the standard output for Python. It's called sys.stdout. It's in the system module, the sys module. So the next one we have is the flush, optional. And remember, these three are optional. In fact, the four are optional. You can print, for example, print 5 is valid. I'm going to show you that. But you should know these 4 parameters are optional. Yeah, so the last one is the flush. Now, flush is very important. You can use flush to specify. You can, for example, if you're printing, when you're working with streams, for example, audio streams, if you're using Python for network programming, you realize sometimes if you print to a file, it's not immediately executed because Python is waiting for a number of characters, especially if you print a very small amount of characters or a number of bytes to a file. Python may wait. That's for to improve efficiency or to improve speed. Python will wait for more characters before printing to the file. In that case, we call it Python is attempting to buffer the input streams or the streams of characters you need to, and then copy them all at once to the file. That helps Python to minimize memory, that's processor time, and do all at once like in a batch. But in case you want to send out, for example, maybe let's say it's a streaming program and you need to stream out small bits of audio in real time, you may want to use the flush function, the flush parameters. You may set it to true. In that case, you're telling Python any small bytes you pass to the print function, Python should flush it out to the output. If it's the standard output or it's a network stream or whatsoever, you're trying to tell Python to flush it out. You shouldn't worry about the last two parameters, the file and the flush parameters, because we ain't going to be looking at that here, even though I'm going to show you a little hint on the file parameter. But what I'm going to be showing you more is the first three: the object, the sep name parameter, the end name parameter. Remember, the file and flush are also named parameter. So let's go straight away to look at some few common examples of the print function. All right, so let's look at normal ways you want to use the print function. For example, you can have an integer, a equals to 10. You can have let's say var1 equals to hello world, and you can even have let's see, you can even have a list. You can even have a list. You can even have a list, or whatever data type you have. You can even have a file, whatever data type you have. We have multiple, let's say sorry, and lastly, maybe we have something like a dictionary. All right, so remember, you can use the print function. All right, so here is an example. So if I run this, you see, take note, every item is printed, or um, every print statement prints on a separate line. For example, you see first line, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 lines, sorry. And you can see it indicates the print function ends with a new line. The new line is like pressing enter on your keyboard. That's what I want you to note. I want you to just note this: every printf function prints on a separate line. We are going to work on this later on. But now let's look at line 1. Take a look at line 1. Let me comment out this using some form of a comment. No, this is not a real comment. I'm just doing this in Python. We use this to comment out things. All right, so this will not appear in the code. Let's be sure. All right, so now let's focus on this line 7. Now you can print stuff on multiple lines like this. You can say, notice these are different objects. The first one is an integer, second one is a string, third one is a list, and even the fourth is a complex number. Now look, if we run this code, you see we print multiple statements on a single line. Now notice, you see these are different items separated by a comma, or different parameters, object parameters separated by a comma. Notice what happens. You see they are separated by space. Take note of the space in between each of these items. That's because by default, if you pass multiple objects, Python is going to separate them using a space character. That's by default. The sep parameter is a space character, and like I told you, Python has two parameters. We have the sep and the end. Now let's see how the sep works. Now if we want these parameters to be separated, let's say with a comma, what we're going to do is that we're going to add what we call the sep named parameter. Why we call it name parameter is that you must pass the name followed by its value. Now we want them to be separated by a comma, so we're going to use a comma, and let's see what Python does now. Take note, you see now they are all separated by a comma. Remember, you can use any character. You can even use multiple commas, or let's say multiple commas. In this case, look at what happens. You see there's multiple comma. You can use whatever you want. We can, in this case, let's use lines. You see we have lines, and let's say if we want them to be separated by a new line, we can use the new line character. We are going to look at the different kinds of We call this its conversion specifier or a format specifier. We're going to look at the different type of format specifiers that can be used within the print function or within a string. So I'm going to show you that later on, but I think we mentioned that when we studied string in our video on Python strings. So if you haven't watched the video, you can check it out. But now if you want each item on this list to be separated by a new line, we use the sep name parameter and we pass a new line as the string. Now a new line is a special character in Python. The two characters actually join to form a new line. Here is the backslash, which means you want to escape, and the n indicates a new line. There are different types of format specifiers. We're going to look at them later on. Now in this case, what is going to happen is, for example, when we run, you see all of them have on different line. Remember, it's only like 7 lines being executed because I've commented this out somehow. Yeah, so it's because of this new line character. So the first one is printed out, print separates it with a new line from this one, and this one. Now, I've showed you how this works. You can use whatever you want. You can even write a string, for example, welcome, and everything works. Even though this is quite silly, but it can always work. So you see, we have 10, welcome, hello, and so on. Now, what you want to do next is want to see how we have looked at the SEP. Let's use something nice for the SEP. Let's say this. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Now, all right. So let's look at what we've created. All right, something nice. All right. So let's shift this to have more space. Now, let's comment this out. Let's open this back. All right, now let's look at the other parameter I was talking about. Now you see, after each print function call to the print function, items are printed on a single line. This is printed here. This is printed here, as you can see, and this is printed here. This is printed here, and this is the dictionary is printed here. Now, if we want them to, we can say, oh, we don't want this, we want them to be printed on a straight line. Now, in that case, let's comment this one out so we can work only with the 3 lines, so we don't have something very long. Let's check this out. So we have 3 items. Now, if we want to print these 3 items on a straight line, we need to tell Python to, what indicates is that Python ends this line, for example, with a new line. So we need to tell Python, don't end this print statement with a new line. Let's tell it for only this. So we tell it, we call it the end parameter. It's a name parameter. We tell it to use a space, end the sprint function with a space. Let's see what Python does. All right, now Python ends it with a space. So we have var1, we have hello world, and immediately after that, the second line is printed. But you see, the second line also ends with a new line by default. So after this is printed, this is printed. In fact, let me show you so you see. Let's do it like this so you see clearly what's happening. It's always good to do like this so you see clearly what's happening. And so you can see what's happening. Line. Okay, so let's change this to line 2, 3, 4. All right, see what happens here. Now look what happens. Now we have line 1. Okay, I just want it to be really clear for you guys so you guys can see what's happening. All right, so you see we have line 1, hello world. Immediately after that we have line 2. In case we didn't put this here, look what's gonna happen. In case we didn't put this here, look what's gonna happen. Hello world on a separate line, this one on a separate line, this on a separate line, this on a separate line. But because we told it to use this for the end parameter, you can see it's hello world. It didn't end with a new line. So the next line, this line 2 was printed immediately after it. We ended it with a space. Remember, we can end it with let's say a comma, for example. See what's going to happen in this case. You're going to see a comma here before line 2. But we can even end it with a comma and 2 space characters. In this case, you're going to see a comma followed by 2 space character here. So here is the end parameter in action. Now, you see this, the end parameter by default is new line. So you see after this, the next line, line 3, appears on a new line. This by default is a new line, n is a new line, so the next one follows on a new line. So all right, now we can it's very simple. What we can easily do now to enable everything to print on a single line, as you see, like I told you, by default, the set parameter is a new line character, and this is what I call a new line character. We have seen it before, but I'm going to show you. So in this case, if we use new line for sep, it's going to behave like a normal printf function. Look at, we have line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. But now let's say we use a line like this for the, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to do it for all this printf function, at least not the last one, because nothing is displayed after. Okay, in this case, let's do it after this three. So we have different various end parameters. Let's see what happens. Okay, see, everything prints on a single line. Line 1 is separated from line 2 by this our sep character. Since line 2 also ends with the sep character, then line 3 follows through after the sep character. In this case, you know, by default it would have been a new line. Now, since line 4 follows through, you see, line 4 follows through, and so on and so forth. So as you can see clearly, the sep parameter prevents each printf function from printing on a new line. It's very important. It may not look very important right now, but if you're working with loops, for example, let's say, let's simplify this so you're gonna see it well. Let's just print the string line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and line 5, so you see it perfectly well. So all right, so let's do something like this. Okay, all right, so even though this dict is quite long, let's use var1. Okay, let's use, oh, let's just use yeah, let's use var1, or let's say var2, or let's use var1, sorry. All right, so now look at it. You see we have line 1. After line 1 we end with this line 2, line 3, line 4, and then line 4 follows through on line 3 with hello world, because line 3, this end character is this stuff here. So that's how the sep parameter works, and I told you I'm going to show you an example of the file, how to use the file parameter. Now the file parameter I'm going to show you. Now let's assume we have a file called let's assume we have a file. I'm going to create that file here. Here is where my codes are executing from. As you can see, I'm executing test.py. If you come here, you're going to see test.py. Here is test.py. Here is it. All right, so I want to create a folder in the same directory of the script so that it can be easier to access the script. So I'm going to create a new text file. All right, the text file should be called print.txt. all right, okay, now print.txt, as you can see, the text file is empty. Okay, now let's see what can happen in case I want to display all these stuffs within the file. What I'm going to do is I can append them together. All right, so I'm going to first append them together, and then I'm going to print in the file. So first I'm going to create my file object. Don't worry if you don't understand now. I'm going to explain the file object later. So I'm going to open a file called print the file. Its name is print.txt, and I want to open it for writing. Writing, and I want to open it for writing plus. Don't mind if you don't understand. It's appending, or all right, let's use A for appending mode, which means the file is going to be appended to after multiple print statements. So what I want to do is to write all this to a file. Now, like I told you, you can use the file parameter. So I've opened the file for appending, and now I'm going to print all this into the file. I'm going to use the sep as a new line. So, or let's just open it for writing. Okay, now I'm going to say A var1 list 1 point 1 uh, dict one. Okay, now I'm going to specify, I want the set parameter to be a new line. So instead of printing them with a space, it should print them with a new line. So you're going to see what is happening. Now I want to specify a file. So I'm going to say file should be equals to an F. As you can see, F is the reference to our file. So let me run this now. F. Let's try to execute the program and see what happened. A var1 is 1.1, dict1 sep. Yeah. So now let's execute this. Let me minimize this one. So let's execute this and see what happens. As you can see, nothing was printed out, even though we used the print function. Why? Because we specified the file. Now let's check our file to see the content right now. All right, wait a minute. Let's. Oh, sorry. Here is not the file. I'll delete this. Here is the file. Sorry. Um, Python created a new file because I had .text kind of sounded. Python created a new file. So here's the file. You see what we printed here has been printed to the file. Like I told you, we use a new line as the separation character. So even though it was on a single printf function, you can see each item was printed on a separate line. So that's how you can print to a file, but it is not advisable to use the print function for a file. There are other functions from the file module you can use to write to a file, but I just wanted to show you that's possible. You can actually print to a file rather than using the standard output. Rather than using the standard output, you can print a file. Remember, if we didn't specify the file, by default the file is going to be the standard output. So you see it's printed out here. This is the console or the standard output. So that's going to be the output. So now we're just going to look. I've shown you the different parameters. That's this the sep, the sep, the end, and I've shown you the file name parameter. So let's just look at a few other examples which use the print function. Here is a fancy example, just fancy example demonstrating the print function. So clearly you can see the first time we have print 4 lines and we end with a star, which indicates they're going to be printed. These 4 lines are going to be printed on a single line because this is ending with a star. So line 2 will follow, line 3 will follow through on line 2, and line 4 will follow through on line 3. So let's see the output so we understand what's happening. And here is the output, so you see clearly what's happening. I think we can include this. All right, so I think let's minimize this. Okay, I'm going to run it again. Okay, so here is the output. Now notice what happens here. You see line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. Okay, the second one is line 5. I use the print statement to go to a new line. The second one is these other 4 lines, line 5. Now they are separated by a space followed by a line character and followed by another space. So you see the follow through line 6 follows through on line 5, line 7 follows through on line 6, and 8 follows through on line 7 because they're and using the exact separation character. You can see the separation here, space, line and space, so all true. Now this you see here also ends with a line. That's why the last character of line 8 is a line, the last character of line 4 is a line. Normally what you want to do sometimes is to end this with a star. You may just leave this like this, and so you have something cleaner. You may leave this like this, so you have something cleaner, as you can see. So now, okay, so you see it's better now. We don't have lines everywhere. So we have the printf function. Since this ends with a new line, this print creates an extra line. Okay, so that's why you see the gaps created now. All right, so as you can see now from this, you see the separation is gap. It's a whole string, hyphen gap hyphen. You see hyphen gap hyphen. Here is the separator, hyphen gap hyphen. You still see it again, hyphen gap. Sorry, hyphen gap hyphen gap hyphen. So you can see the separator here, hyphen gap hyphen gap hyphen gap. So The last one we have is end. We have two space characters. So you can see these two space characters are used to separate. So because we use the end parameter, notice that by default, if you don't use the end parameters, all these are going to be printed on different lines. Like now, as you can see, all are printed on separate lines. So you see here, separate lines. Okay, you see separate lines, line 13 to line 16 are separate lines. Because we use the end parameter, you see all were printed on a single line separated by what we said is the end parameter. And I've already showed you the sep, but we're going to look at another example using the sep parameter so you see clearly. Now, line 17 just ends with this. You see slash, you see, so line 17, you see, line 18 continues with that. You see, line 19, and we can cancel this here, so it should be uniform. And you can see line 20 just ends with line 20. But you see here we have hyphen, new line, hyphen. So what you see here, this is the first hyphen. New line is like pressing enter on your keyboard, so it comes down, and then we have the next hyphen. Here we have hyphen, new line, then hyphen. All right, so I think this is a simple example for you to understand. Now let's look at another example which uses the set parameters to separate multiple objects on a single line. So here's another fancy example. It just has three variables. A pointing to an object with the variable 30, with the value 30 an integer. Var1 is a float, and var text is a string, points to a string object. Now these are all identifiers, three identifiers. Now we're printing them on a straight line. By default, let's see for line 1. By default, they are separated by space. Like I showed you, they're separated by space. That's by default. We're going to look at that. So for example, if I said, let me comment this out, this all out. Now let's see how this typical statement to be printed. This statement is going to be printed out. So now typically this is how this is going to be printed out. You see we have 30. All right, let's see something. Okay, so we have 30 50.2 hello Python, and we have 30. There's one which we did not comment out. All right, so I think here, so okay. So I've commented. So now we have to see the first variable, the second is separated by space, and this space is not because of the space we have here. Take note, like I said, it's because the set parameter by default is a space. Okay, the set parameter by default is a space. As you can see, it still has the space. Here is a space. Between this and this, we have another space, and then lastly, we have Python. Hello, yes, and we have hello, and then we have Python. All right, now because of these characters, all right, now let's see. Now here we are going to be using different separation parameters to print out our stuff. So let's look at the output of this script. As you can see, for the first parameter, we separate items with a hyphen. So you see hyphen, hyphen, hyphen. Here we use a back forward slash here. So you see forward slash here. Here we use three characters, the caret left, the hyphen, and the caret right. So we have you see the separation characters. Here we use the asterisk and 3 stars, so we call it the asterisk character. And now here we have a space, the string and the space. So you see we have space here, a string and another space here. All right, and lastly we have the new line character, which indicates a should be printed and it should be separated by var2 here with a space. So you see the space coming down here. And we said next we have it should be var1, which is as you can see, var1 here is 50.25. var1 should be separated from the string hello with a space too, because of the separation character new line. And all these items, even from text, so you see all these items are printed on new lines. This print statement also creates the additional new line we have here. And we have the last, we use a caret left space var caret space caret right character. And here we have, so here you can see here is the separation character, and this is it. Here we have the separation here, we have another one here, and we have another one here. Okay, so that's what does. So you can have all three items together. For example, you can have both the separation and the end character, you understand, to be equals to something. Let's say you want the end character to be this. All right. So like I was saying, you can use the end parameter, and you can also use the file parameter to specify, for example, your file. Okay, so it's possible to do all this on the same print function. It's not like if you have the step, you can't have the end or whatever. So I just wanted to show you. So I hope this video has clearly explained to you how to use the print function and specify the step, end, and file parameter. So in the next video, we are going to look at Python loops, and we are going to be starting with the while loop, and then following we're going to be looking at the for loop. Okay, so see you in the next video, and do have a nice time. All right.